Okay, so good morning and welcome to General Finance of July 19th. I'll first begin with our agenda of item number 1 of any identification of any media on the line.
Victoria Gray from the Turtle Island News.
Thank you and good morning, Victoria.
Good morning.
Are there any representatives from the Two Road Times? Okay, seeing or hearing none, apologies as well, as I do have a little bit of low bandwidth, so I will be just working with my audio this morning. That being said, I'll move to agenda item number 2, which is any changes, additions, or deletions to the agenda. Seeing or hearing none, do I have a motion to move the agenda and accept the agenda of July 19th? Moved by Michelle, seconder. Second by Sherry Lynn. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion's carried. We do have a delegation, Matt Jameson from the Development Corporation in relation to bingo hall COVID limits. I know I don't think he's on the line at this point in time. He was running a few minutes late, so we'll move on until Matt joins us this morning. And at this point, we'll move to the adoption of the General Finance minutes of July 5th.
I'll move.
It's moved by Michelle. Is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Second by Nathan. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Favor.
Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion's carried. I'll now move on to item number 5 on our agenda, which is recommendations from our Building and Infrastructure Committee. I have recommendation number 1A.
So moved by myself that the Building and Infrastructure Committee recommend to Six Nations of the Grand River Elected Council to approve the 2021 First Nations Infrastructure Investment Plan core-based funding allocations in the total amount of $1,555,955.85 for submission to Indigenous Services Canada.
Okay, thank you for the mover, Michelle. Is there a seconder in Councillor Paulus Bombury's absence?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you for that. Hazel, are there any further questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Favor.
Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion's carried. Is there a motion to waive second reading on the previous motion 1A? Moved by Michelle, seconder. Second by Hazel. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion's carried. I'll now move on to recommendation 2.
Okay, moved by myself, second by Hazel, that the Building and Infrastructure Committee recommends, whoops, sorry, my page is cut off here. Oops. Okay, that the Building and Infrastructure Committee recommends to the Six Nations of the Grand River Council, whereas the Six Nations, oh no, it wasn't cut off. Okay, can I start over? I move that the Building and Infrastructure Committee recommend to the Six Nations of the Grand River Council to approve and award the contract for the replacement of Bridge Number 7 project to Sierra Bridge in the amount of $2,149,629, of which $700,685.05 has been approved to be paid. Therefore, that the Building and Infrastructure Committee recommends to the Six Nations of the Grand River Elected Council to approve payment of Sierra Bridges Incorporated progress payment number 3 dated June 4th, 2021 in the amount of $431,036.78 for the replacement of bridge number 7 project. Source of funds identified as a combination of Indigenous Services Canada and the Ministry of Transport, Ontario.
I second the motion, Hazel.
Okay, thank you for that, Michelle and Hazel. Are there any questions or comments to the motion? I see Wendy.
Yeah, I get what the motion is trying to say. I think it's pretty, it's worded pretty wonky, that it's laid out. But when I read the material, so we're doing payments 3 and 4 against this project, right? So this is a third payment, and then the fourth payment is coming up. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I would suggest we just say it, but just so we can correct the way that it's written, because I think the word recommend is left out of it. It just doesn't read right.
Yeah, there is the first part of this has to be amended.
So it almost should be in a sense of 2 motions, really is what it sounds like. First, the amendment portion, and then looking into the second portion. Is that agreeable, or sorry? I'm just looking at the motion myself.
But it's just duplicate, right? And so, yeah, we need to clean up the wording, take out the Grand River Elected Council the twice it's in there, and approve the contract. Well, no, we've approved the contract a year ago. It's making payment now.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so-
how sorry.
Oh, sorry, Wendy. Yeah, so agreed, Michelle. So we'll look to our administration to clean that wording up on that motion.
Okay.
So if we make that note, are there any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Favor.
Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion's carried. Motion to waive second reading.
I can move that.
I second that.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. It's moved by Michelle and seconded by Hazel to waive second reading on the previous motion, obviously with the corrections that were noted. All in favor?
Favor.
Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion's carried. I'll now move on to recommendation 3.
So I'll move that one too.
If I can look.
So,
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Michelle.
okay. So moved by myself that the Building and Infrastructure Committee recommends to the Six Nations of the Grand River Elected Council, whereas the Six Nations of the Grand River Elected Council approved to award the contract for the replacement of bridge number 7 project to Sierra Bridge in the amount of $2,149,629, of which $1,131,721.83 has been recommended to be paid to date. Therefore, that the Building and Infrastructure Committee recommends to the Six Nations of the Grand River Council to approve payment to Sierra Bridge Incorporated progress payment number 4 dated July 5th, 2021 in the amount of $321,122.52 for the replacement of bridge number 7 project. Source of funds identified as a combination of Indigenous Services Canada and the Ministry of Transportation, Ontario.
I second the motion.
Okay, thank you, Michelle and Hazel. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? Wendy?
Yeah, nothing against the motion itself, but I'm just wondering, I guess, over to Anna Cecile, how come, or Mike, how come we're doing payments 3 and 4? How come why was the delay with payment 3? Because we're already into payment 4, and I would assume there's a schedule to it.
Okay, thank you, Wendy, for your question. I see our Director of Public Works, Mike. Good morning. you can respond to Wendy's question. Thank you.
Good morning, Chief and Council. Thanks for the question. So it's just the timing of when they're actually submitting the payment certificate. So we were late on 2 because they submitted well after our deadline for the B&I committee. So we're trying to clean that up a bit. So they submitted 3 after the deadline of the last one, and they submitted 4 a bit after the deadline for this one. But because we were late on the second payment, we wanted to make sure that we captured both 3 and 4 because the project's almost done now. So it's just the timing and the lining up of the committees that's resulted in the 3 and 4 coming forward at once.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mike, for that response. Are there any further questions or comments in relation to the motion? Okay, seeing or hearing none, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion's carried. Can I look to get a motion to waive second reading? Moved by Michelle, seconder.
I second. I second.
Second by Hazel. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion's carried. I'll now move into recommendation 4A. If I can look to a mover in the absence of Councillor Paulus Bomberry.
I'll move it. I've already seconded it.
Okay, I'll actually, I seen Michelle's hand up. Michelle, are you willing to motion?
Yeah, I just have
Okay, so-
questions on this one, which I hope you or Councillor Johnson can answer because it's in regards to their train tracks, CN train tracks. Okay, so I'll move it. That the Building and Infrastructure Committee recommends to the Six Nations of the Grand River Elected Council to approve to execute amending agreement number 1 to extend the duration of the contribution agreement with Transport Canada for a maximum funding amount of $147,434.43 from their Rail Safety Improvement Program for the extension of hydro infrastructure and the installation of warning signs and bell at mile 25.76 Hagersville subdivision, also known as the Pauline Johnson Road Railroad crossing to March 31st, 2022.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you, Michelle and Hazel, for moving and seconding. I'll pass it back to you, Michelle, for a question.
So at Building and Infrastructure Committee, we had this discussion. Six Nations has to put some funds in, but it was my understanding probably a year ago or more, CN was going to contribute some funds. So did that ever happen? And can it go towards the extra funds that are needed for the installation of the lights and the bell?
So if I could just respond and perhaps maybe even if our SAO or even our Director of Public Works have anything to add. I know at the time, Michelle, that they were, I think it was contributing $30,000. And that was, again, looking as just a straight donation. But in the meantime, again, that was specific to, I believe their donation at the time was going to Iroquois Lodge, and that they were still looking to go through this fund to actually see that project through. So I'm not sure if our SAO or if Mike, our Director of Public Works, has anything further that they'd like to add.
My understanding too, Chief, but go ahead, Mike.
So yeah, I wasn't aware of any of that, but under this fund, we're meant to contribute 20%, which adds up to about $36,000 and change for the project. That's what's outstanding, I guess, in our contribution.
Okay, thanks. I was under the impression, and so it's my misunderstanding that they were going to provide funds for this actual project. And I do recall them wanting to donate to the lodge, and I don't know if that was ever done either. But I'm moving this one.
I
Okay,
second.
thank you, Thank you, Michelle, for that. And again, can do further follow-up in relation to that donation as well to see that that went through. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Favor.
Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion's carried. Motion to waive second reading,
I'll move.
moved by Michelle, second by Hazel. All in favor?
Favor.
Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion's carried. I'll now move to item number 6, which is a deferred item from our July 14th Building and Infrastructure Committee. Recommendation 1. Looking a mover and seconder from this deferred item.
I'll move on that, Mark. Hazel.
Okay, thank you for that, Hazel. Is there a seconder? Second by Helen. And if I could just ask the mover just to read the motion.
Thanks. Whereas the Six Nations of the Grand River Elected Council approved the Six Nations Public Works Department to negotiate a settlement for an ultra-thin layer of asphalt over the entire work area with Norjon Contracting and Paving Limited to address the 2020 road resurfacing deficiencies on Fifth Line. Therefore, that the Building and Infrastructure Committee recommends to the Six Nations of the Grand River Elected Council to award the Fifth Line Road Repairs Project to Walker Construction Limited at an upset time of $379,992. Source of the funds identified as a combination of 2021-22 minor capital and 21-22 MTO funds. I move.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Hazel. It's been moved and seconded. It does look like there's also a typo in the motion in relation to the word limit. So if we can make that correction. Are there any further questions or comments in relation to this motion? Okay, seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Favor.
Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, oh, 2 opposed. 1, 2, 3, 4, motions carried. Is there a motion to waive second reading?
I move to.
Moved by Hazel, seconded by Helen. To reading, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motions carried.
Sorry, Mark, just
2
following.
opposed, my apologies. Yeah, my apologies. Wendy and Michelle are opposed. I will also now look to the second recommendation. Looking for a mover and seconder.
I'll move, Mark. That's to waive second reading, right?
Okay. No, we did second reading. This is now recommendation 2.
Sorry.
Are you still willing to move on that, Hazel?
Okay, just let me quickly scan that.
I'll move on this, Mark.
Okay, I have a mover. Helen is willing to move on that. Is there a seconder?
I'll second it, Mark.
I just
Okay,
have a
thank you.
question.
Second by Hazel. If I could just get the mover to read the motion, and then we'll go back to you,
Oh,
Helen, for your question.
that the Building and Infrastructure Committee recommends to the Six Nations of the Grand River Elected Council to award the contract to Coco Paving, Inc. for the road resurfacing project, road number 245, Chiefswood Road, hot mix asphalt at an upset. I'm reading this from my phone, so it's hard to read. Upset limit of $338,890. Source of the funds identified as a combination of 2021-2022 minor capital funds and 2021-2022 MTO funds. I just have a
Okay, thank
question.
you.
Where
Okay, thank you
exactly is it?
for reading that out. Oh, my apologies. Sorry, Helen. Back
No,
over
I
to
just
you,
wondered
Mike.
where exactly is this? Is it the whole Chiefswood Road or just parts?
I see
Yeah.
our Director of Public Works, Mike, over to you.
Thanks, Chief. So that section of roads on Chiefswood Road between the north leg of Bicentennial Trail, so basically right where Miracle Man's is, up to Fifth Line.
Oh, okay.
Okay, are there any further questions or comments? Seeing or
Sherilyn.
hearing none, it's been moved and second. Oh, my
Sure.
apologies. Sorry. Over to you, Sherilyn.
Just when will that be starting?
Mike?
So they're going to have to schedule the work. Yeah, we're fortunate enough with this type of surface with asphalt. It doesn't need to be put down until I think October, but it'll all depend now on work schedules. So once we confirm with the vendor, they'll give us a schedule, and of course we won't let them start anything out of season.
Thank you. Thank you for your response, Mike. I see Wendy has her hand up.
Any chance it can turn the corner and come down Third Line? Just as far as Tuscarora off of Chiefswood?
When we're done with that, the detour next year, we'll be looking at that one for sure when the bridge is back.
Thank you for that, Mike. So we got one more year, Wendy, on that part. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Favor.
Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion's carried. Motion to waive second reading.
I'll move.
I'll
Moved
second.
by Helen, seconder. Second by
I second.
Hazel. All in favor?
Favor.
Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion's carried. I'll now move on to item number 7, which is in relation to the Six Nations veterans, as well as an OFNLP allocation. Recommendation 1, is there a mover and seconder?
I'll move. It's Melba.
Moved by Melba, seconder.
I'll second it, Mark.
By Hazel. And if I could just ask Melba, the mover, just to read out the motion, and I'll look to any questions or comments.
Whereas the Six Nations of the Grand River Elected Council has provided annual allocation from OFNLP to the Six Nations Veterans Association to help with cost of the annual Remembrance Day activities, and whereas due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the 2020 and 2021 Remembrance Day activities had to be canceled, and whereas that due to health and safety concerns, repairs, renovations, and maintenance are needed at Six Nations Veterans Park. Therefore, be it resolved that the Six Nations of the Grand River Elected Council accept the request from the Six Nations Veterans Association and approve an allocation of $20,000 from the 2020 21, 22 OFNLP funds to the Six Nations Veterans Association to be used for repairs, renovations, and maintenance of the Six Nations Veterans Park. I so move.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Melba, for moving and seconding. Hazel, I'll now look to questions and comments. I see Wendy has her hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question. So this is a carry forward, right? That's how I'm reading it, because they couldn't spend the money during the pandemic, then they're carrying it forward and asking to have all of the money to do this work. And just in terms of process, there's nothing in an agreement or anything like that that stipulates we can move it around that way.
Okay, thank you for your question, Wendy. I'll look to Anna Cecile to provide a response, and I can add as well.
Thank you so much, Chief. There is no agreement with the veterans regarding any money that we have to provide. However, in every single year, we have provided $10,000. They come every time to apply for it. So they did not come in fiscal year 2020 and 2021. So there was no approval. Basically, what they're saying is because they didn't incur or requested money at that point, they would like to request $20,000 this year.
Okay, thank you, Anna Cecile. And just for your information as well, I'm sure many of you have driven past the Veterans Park, and it's actually the renovations have had to be completed on a time-sensitive basis, as the foundation of the monument needed to be repaired as soon as possible, as if it didn't get repaired in time, it could have potentially have had even worse damage. So as you can see, the Veterans Park is really well taken care of, and as you see, a lot of our community members are now continuing to enjoy that park. So the money is really going to overall the Veterans Park. So thank you for that, Anna Cecile. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Favor.
Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion's carried. Motion to waive second reading?
Moved by Melba.
I second Hazel.
Thank you, Melba. Thank you, Hazel. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion's carried. Just before I go next to item number 8, which is a presentation by our Chief Financial Officer, I just want to head back to the top of our agenda, which was our delegation. I see Matt Jameson is on the line now, so perhaps we can now pass the floor over to Matt for his item on our agenda. Good morning, Matt.
Yes, good morning, Council. I apologize for not being on at 9. So I presume that the memo that I sent to the Council is in the hands of all the councilors, and so effectively my request is that the bingo operation be permitted to reopen, to be reopened effective immediately, given the fact that our competitors in the region are now permitted to open under a 50% occupancy rule. As Council may know, back in June of 2020, we had a resolution from Council giving us the ability to reopen under the specific protocols that we had developed, and those protocols remain in full force and effect today. So we have contact tracing, we have a secured entrance, we have screening and guest tracking for tracing purposes. And so essentially the request I have is to permit us to reopen to keep pace with our competitors in the marketplace. Bingo, we do have greater than a 30,000 square foot facility. So at a 50% capacity, which is what's been promoted in other gaming operations in the province, that would translate to 1,700 people. 150 people in our building under Ontario rules. But what we've done is we've taken our square footage and mapped out the bingo floor, and we've calculated that we can comfortably host 250 patrons playing traditional bingo, along with 50 patrons playing our electronic 24-ball bingo. And so we would like to open effective immediately, if we can, to host a maximum of 300 patrons, all being socially distanced, and of course, subject to our COVID protocols.
Okay, thank you, Matt, for that. Are there any questions or comments for Matt? I see Michelle.
Oh, I was going to move. And it was my understanding once we went to green that as long as we had the protocols in place, entities were opening up. So am I wrong in that, thinking that?
No, actually, Michelle, I think that's the same understanding as well that I had, and that actually is the ratification that you see on the our last agenda item as well, is that email poll of moving to green. So in fact, it would all fall in line, really, at this point. Are there any further questions or comments? I see Matt has his hand up, and I'll shift over to Wendy.
Yeah, I just want to be clear, the COVID protocols as they're written right now do not permit bingo to open beyond 50 people. I'm sorry, I think 25 people the way it's written. So, you know, the protocol that we have, I think it's was developed at a point in time when, you know, things have evolved and, you know, the economy has opened up. I just don't think that the bingo specific protocol has been updated to reflect those changes. That's why I'm here.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Ben. I do see Wendy has her hand up.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm not disagreeing with anything that Matt's putting forward, but I'm just curious on process, because I understand that the protocols were updated not that long ago, and we stayed with the color coding, but they had been adjusted, and it's good that we still have Mike on, and I know Nathan, I think, is on, because I thought everything was going to ECG because all the sports teams, everything is flowing through there. So are we now changing that process and coming through here?
That's a really good question. Thank you for the process question. I will look to Mike as our chair at the ECG.
Morning. So just to Matt's point there, yes, it was written prior to, I guess, the acceleration of the reopening of the province, and it does spell out that they're allowed 50 people indoors, but it does have a provision within it. The play plans need to be approved through the ECG, which the ECG pushes over to public health, and they collaborate with that. So I mean, process-wise, it's a bit convoluted because, as Matt had alluded to, council had granted an exemption status as far as how they were operating versus the actual protocols, the plan, the alert system. So I honestly don't know what the protocols would be. I think what we'd like it to be, though, is that it comes to the emergency control group, and Matt had presented there previously. But I know that they've been operating under, and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, you've been operating under that exemption ever since you had received it, correct?
Well, when we went on a complete lockdown in the community, we locked down our operation, of course. But when we started to reopen, we sought clarity from council and received clarity that motion from council still stood, the June motion of 2020. And so, and that was very specific to 50 people. And so, you know, as things have changed in the province with their accelerated reopening, as you mentioned, Mike, the framework hasn't changed. So if the framework goes to green, that means that we're limited to 50 people. And because I don't think the framework's been updated. I think in hindsight, the framework should be updated to reflect the actual market conditions out there, given our competitive environment where, you know, the provincial gaming operations can host up to 50% capacity. The 50 people number that would apply at bingo under green, I think it's arbitrary, given the fact that we've got over 30,000 square feet and we can host 1,700 people in the building. 50 just doesn't seem to make any sense to me, but once again, that's a process that was built by the council and ECG, and whatever that process is, we'll respect it, but we're seeking clarity in terms of how we can operate given the competitive market set right now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Matt. Looking back over to Wendy, has her hand up.
Yeah, I would agree on the point that, that Mike made, that it's a bit convoluted right now, especially because it is in green and having to go through all of these hoops when, outside of the community, as you know, Mike, like sports teams and others, they don't have to go through all of those hoops. They're doing things openly. And this isn't about sports, but using that as an example. But I think it is we have to look at the process and look at what we're doing given where we are right now. But going back, I thought the last presentation that we had from ECG was a complete overview and review and changes to the framework. So I'm a little bit confused on that, but that's okay. It's Monday and I haven't had all my coffee yet. So, but I do think that we need to look at the size of the building and we need to look at the situation moving forward. But we do need to make sure that we're following some sort of process as well, just for fairness across the board.
Yes, I agree, and thank you for that, Wendy. I think as well as there's really those one-offs in a sense as well to the overall updated plan, and obviously the bingo hall being that kind of one-off in a sense. So do recognize the process question and do agree that we do need to have that process clear. Helen had her hand up.
No, along the lines of Wendy. I mean, it's wide open out there, except here. People keep asking me, what's going on? When can our stores have more than 2 people? Everybody's going to the mall and everybody's going all over, and our stores can only have 2 people at a time. So they want to know what's going on. So it sounds to me like green needs a good updating of some sort, because it's not mixing and matching with outside the reserve. The casinos was just a hopping over the weekend. It was all kinds of people there. So I don't see why the bingo can't open and be the same way. We need to update our green. We need to update our green, I think. Make it more in tune with what's going on the outside world.
Okay, thank you, Helen, for your comments. I'll look over to Melba. Had a question or comment?
Yeah, the comment is, I agree with Matt concerning our customer base and also some of the comments that were made, all around us. And we really have to consider our mental well-being with people. We need other people. We need activities. So this is a great activity that people enjoy, and so I really think it's necessary. So I want to make the recommendation that the Six Nations of the Grand River Elected Council permit Six Nations Bingo to reopening to a maximum of 300 people effective July 16th, 2021.
Okay, thank you, Melba. There's a motion on the floor that Melba has just put on to allow and agree to Matt's recommendation. Is there a seconder?
Mark, it's Hazel. Could I ask a question first?
Sure, I'm actually just going to grab a seconder. I see Michelle had her hand up as a seconder, so it's been moved and seconded. I'll now go back to questions and comments. Over to you, Hazel.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, rather than going to 300, why can't it be based on the square footage and the ratio? Because if the capacity is, I think Matt said 3,000 people, why couldn't it be more than 300 people?
Okay, thank you for that, for your question. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, that's a good question. We did look at, the building is actually fire permitted to 1,700 people. So technically speaking, we could fit 850 people at a 50% occupancy. But what we did is we mapped the floor based on the current social distancing requirements of 6 feet. And based on that metric, we were able to calculate that we could fit comfortably 300 people. Now,
Oh,
that I have seen other provinces reduce or lower the social distancing requirement from 6 feet to 3 feet. And in that scenario, we would want to increase the number of people that we could host. But the way that at this point, we don't know what the provincial standard will be, and we're not entirely clear on the community COVID standard for us. I think, I can't put words in the mouths of the ECG or council, but I think the next logical step on the framework would be to lift the state of emergency, which would mean that we would then go back to our traditional operating environment. And if that's not the case, we believe that with 300 people, we can generate 80% of the revenue that we previously generated prior to COVID. So it'll get us back to an operating environment that's profitable, just not as profitable as it could be under a free, when the state of emergency is lifted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your response, Matt. I do see 2 other hands being raised. I'll first check in with Michelle and then over to Wendy.
And so just on Matt's point of the state of emergency, I brought that up last week because we were no longer in a state of emergency. What was it about that? I guess I couldn't put that forward. So I would be more than willing to put that forward today.
Okay, thank you, Michelle, for your comments. So I do want to just look to hone in on the first recommendation, but we'll definitely look to lift the state of emergency discussion at this point in time. I know there was discussion of the ECG as well. I'm not sure if our chair Mike has anything further to add on that specific topic. But just before then, I'll check in with Wendy.
Thanks. Mark, sorry if I missed it, but do you have a seconder for the motion? If you don't, I'll second the motion. I'm satisfied with starting with the 300, and then we can always build, see how that goes, making sure that we have no issues, and then let's build that, because it is less than 50%. It's more like a third. So I'm satisfied, and it is an exemption outside of the ECG process, but I think what the dialogue is we need to have a look at that system that we have in place as well. And yeah, that's it.
That's it. That's exactly it. And thank you for that, Wendy. I believe I do have a seconder, mover and seconder. So are there any further questions or comments to the motion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
favor.
Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motions carried. Motion to waive second reading.
Wave, Melba.
Moved by Melba, seconder. Second by Helen. Any further questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none. Oh, my apologies, Matt.
Sorry, yeah, just a quick comment, just so if the motion's passed, just to set expectations, we are having somewhat of a challenge getting our employees to come back to work. So don't expect us to have bingo operational tonight. We're pushing hard to reattract our employee base. So we're going to reopen as soon as possible, as soon as we can get the staff, and we'll make social media and public announcements when that happens. Okay.
That's great, and thank you for that clarification. Just a quick question in the chat, Matt. Does the 50%? There's a chat question that came to the chat. Does the 50% include workers?
The total building occupancy of 1,700 does include bodies, so all bodies, right? But at 50% capacity, that would mean 850 people. So sort of to Wendy's point, at 300 people, we'd be operating at 17% of our total human capacity in the building under the fire rating.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor to waive second reading?
Favor.
Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motions carried. Okay, Matt, so thank you again for joining us. Just really quickly though, I do want to touch base with Mike, our chair of the ECG. just back to Michelle's point on the lifting of the state of emergency.
Well, this was discussed at the previous ECG meeting, and we did have a good discussion there with our community emergency management coordinator, looking at, you know, what checks the boxes as far as instating a community emergency and what it would do for us, even funding wise, if we were to declare it over, because COVID is still very real, and we're not sure what September will bring. At this point in time, there was no movement at the ECG or, you know, desire to terminate the declaration. It's based on the community emergency management coordinator's recommendation and the different paperwork that we do have within our emergency plan. So those points are still very valid in that it could cause different disruptions, and again, it goes against what we have written in writing in the plan.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mike, for that response. I think again, though, that more discussion, because as we do know, that you know, in the beginning of the state of emergency, that funding wasn't necessarily attached to actually calling that state of emergency. So that obviously, to me, isn't a factor to continuing to stay actually in the state of emergency itself. So I think that's something that also needs to be further discussed. I see a number of hands being raised. I first want to start with Helen, and then over to Wendy, and then Michelle.
Yeah, we've been reading that they're expecting another wave in September. So I'm a little hesitant to remove the state of emergency. Also, I've been reading there's quite an increase in the states. I read over the last couple of days of getting quite an increase in the states again. So I'm a little hesitant to remove that at this point in time.
Okay, thank you, Helen, for your comments. Over to you, Wendy.
Yeah, I think we need to look at it. And it would be nice to see a bit of a timeline for, you know, when we do have, if we're in green, how long are we there? How long are we staying in the color coded sections, so that we can map it and we can look at the trends. I think it would be easier to make decisions based on that, looking at the picture. And I think I agree that my understanding that COVID money is not tied to whether or not you're in a state of emergency, because if it was, there would be a lot of people, communities not receiving money. And with that, I always think, you know, the state of emergency is for a specific purpose. We're in that situation where it calls for that mass effort and that dedication. And if we're not in that situation where it is that strict emergency, then we should call it off, because otherwise we're riding it out for a long time, because we can call a state of emergency at any time. So I'm cautioned more about, you know, playing with that and holding us in a state of emergency when we're not at that level right now. So I think we just have to be careful of being in a constant state, because it loses its meaning. And I think that's what we're starting to feel in that process. So it's not tied to money, it's not tied to anything else. And you know, that whole document for ECG and all of that, I mean, needs to be relooked at and redone, because it is outdated and so many things have changed, and there's been so much learning from COVID. So I think we really need to take a strong look at that and what it means going forward in the process.
Okay, thank you, Wendy, for your comments as well. Michelle.
I'll pass. You and Wendy both spoke to two of my points.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Michelle. So what I think at this point in time, just specifically to that conversation, Mike, if we can look to take that back to ECG this week, I do like Wendy's suggestion of having the trends and really have it laid out so that we can make an informed decision based upon that piece. But I think if we can get our IMT or individuals to look at you know, the pros and cons in a sense of those trends, and have a further discussion on this topic, I think that'd be greatly appreciated.
Okay, thanks, Chief. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Mike. I see Sherilyn has her hand up.
after we do the ratification, since Mike's on the line, can we have him to explain what the green level entails and some clarification? Because I've been still getting questions regarding what does monitored gatherings mean to private gatherings. So if he can explain that, since we're live for the community to hear.
Okay, thank you, Sherilyn, for that. And I know our comms team also does even further clarification points as well in terms of infographics of what exactly that means as well. So perhaps maybe for now we can move to the ratification of the email poll of moving to alert level green. Looking to first put a motion on the floor, and then I'll look to Mike for further clarification to Sherilyn's points. Is there a mover? Moved by Michelle. Seconder? Second by Helen. And again, that's to move to alert level green. Are there any further questions or comments? So maybe perhaps I could check in with Mike. Mike, if we could maybe just provide some further clarification to alert level green itself.
So I'd rather bring a bit more to the team in. I'm not prepared to provide any kind of presentation to the community or overview. So maybe we can put us on, an upcoming meeting, and we can have more of the team do that. Some people that prepared it, and really speak to those issues and clearly lay it out for the community, if that's what council wants to see.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, Mike, and I apologize to put you on the spot like that. So what I will look to, because there was even further questions in relation to green in the document itself. So looks like maybe perhaps we have 2 takeaway items in addition to the one that we just discussed of the community emergency, and further adding this clarification to alert level green and what that means in its entirety. So we'll look to that to the ECG and further communication to community. Okay, seeing or hearing no further questions. It's been moved and seconded. Are there all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motions carried. Motion to waive second reading. Moved by Michelle, seconder. Second by Helen. All in favor to waive second reading? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motions carried. So we'll have those 2 takeaway items, council, for further follow-up back to full council in relation to those 2 items. First one being the community state of emergency, and the second one being further clarification to green alert level and actually the full document in its entirety. I'll now move to item number 8, funding agreements, which is a presentation by Anna Cecile. I'll pass the floor over to Anna Cecile.
Good morning, everyone. As agreed in February, the Finance Department will present the agreements that have been signed in the period. So in this time, we're going to present the agreement signed between May 2015 and June 30th. So
my apologies, Anna Cecile. Can you just put your screen back up? We just see your home screen.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Back over to you.
So we're going to present today the agreements that have been signed between May 15 and June 30th. So this is a distribution by funder. So we have received, we have signed agreements for 13.4 million for ISC, then Minister of Education 3.9, Minister of Community and Social Services, Children and Social Services for 3.3, and 2 other small grants. So the total agreement signed for that period is 2.7, where ISC represents 65% of funding, Ministry of Education 19%, and Ministry of Community Children, Community Social Services 16%. This is the same distribution. So again, the 20.7 million signed, it has been distributed by the departments that have received, that has estimated the fundings that it designated to. So where health is receiving 11.7 million, which is 57% of the funding, and social services is receiving 4.4 million, which represents 22% of funding. Administration is receiving 1.6 million.
Sorry, is it increased?
Sorry. Sorry to interrupt, Anastasia. Can you increase your page?
Sure, I think.
Okay, perfect. That works. Thank you.
Yes, so we have 20.7 million, and this is the distribution by departments. From those 20.7 million, 1.8 million has been received for COVID support. And this is the detail that we have received. 39,000 for Ontario Works, 1.6 million for administration for emergency management assistant, and assisted living and home and community care, around 200,000. And this is the detail of every single agreement, again, for the 20.7 million. And you will see here what kind of document it is, what date we receive it. If it's for COVID or regular funding, the funder, the purpose of the fund, the department that has received it, the amount, and the percentage of the total. So our next presentation for these agreements will be for the period July 1st to August. That will be done during the first week of September. Is there any questions?
Okay, thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Anna Cecile, for your presentation in relation to the agreement signed. Are there any questions or comments for Anna Cecile?
Sorry, it's Wendy.
Sure. Go ahead, Wendy.
Can you just go over the percentages again?
Sure. So let's say when we do distribution by funder, 65% is provided. I'm going to share it. So let's say when we go by funder, 65% of the amount provided corresponds to ISC.
My apologies again, Anna Cecile. It's just back onto your home screen.
Ooh.
So we're not seeing your presentation. If you could put your presentation back up.
Sure. Is it on now?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, I don't know why this happened. So as mentioned, out of the 20.7 million that we have received, 65% comes from ISC, 19% comes from the Ministry of Education, 16% comes from the Ministry of Children, Community, Social Services. And we have 2 small grants from GREAT and Ministry of Health. And if we look at the same number divided by department, 57% is allocated to health, 22% is allocated to social services, and administration and schools have received 8%. Public works have received 5%. And again, small grants for education, care works, post-secondary, and recreation.
out of the same 20.7 million, 1.8 has been received as COVID support for these areas. And this is, the detail of each of them. This is sorted by date. This is the allocation, the distribution, agreement by agreement.
So my question is, because I'm not following the percentages and how they flow in each of your charts. So of the first chart, and not to switch back and forth, but you don't need to switch back and forth. But so of that money, this is of the grand total 20 million, we've received 65% of that, or 65% of the 20 million is from ISK, and so on. So that's what I think you said, the latter. So when we get into the final chart, so when I'm looking at that and I see the great funding, the Jordan's principal funding, 23%, that doesn't mean the same thing. It doesn't mean that 23% of Jordan's principal comes from, like, it you know what I mean? It's not, your percentages are not following through. So I'm guessing that we've received 23% of that allocation. Is that what this chart means?
So these are the agreements signed. So it's not necessarily cash. When we sign the agreement, let's say someone give us $1 million in the agreement, right? They say, we grant you $1 million. Sometimes $1 million is received at the moment, sometimes it's spread during the year. So the agreements have signed for 20.7 million. Out of that 20.7 million that we have signed in the agreement, 13 million comes from ISC. So this is not a cash flow part, it's just, what we have signed. So we have signed for 20.7.
So we've signed ISK agreements at 65% of 13,447.
No, the 13.4, we have signed for 13.4, and that represents 65% of the total agreements that we have signed.
Sorry, the last chart at the bottom?
The last chart at the bottom means, let's say, for Jordan's principal, we have signed an agreement for 4.7 million, which represents 23% of the total agreement signed for
23% of what?
The total agreement signed.
23% of $20 million.
Yes, this is not the money we have received. This is agreements that we have signed. And all the tables are referred to the agreement signed.
Okay, are there any further questions or comments?
I have a question.
Sure, Helen.
So my understanding when I'm reading percentages, if you go back to that little weenie one first. So my understanding when I'm reading these percentages, we're saying that from the Ministry of Education, we've received 19% of the money, and it's going into August. Are we going to be able to spend the other 80% by the end of March? That's what I'm reading. Is that right?
Okay, I see what Wendy's saying. I see what Helen's saying, and it's obviously just it's causing confusion. But I do also see Anna Cecile is saying, so the 19% of the Ministry of Education, that's 19% of $20 million that's coming from the Ministry of Education.
Right. So it's
not the total of, say, 19% spent of the $3.9 million. The sum of percentages is from the 19% of the grand total.
Yeah, 19% of 20 million. So
yes.
Does that mean we have to spend 80% by the end of March?
And
If we only got 20%? Like, this is
So-
what I'm reading.
this is a table that details the agreements that we have signed. It doesn't represent the cash that we have received. What it means is the Minister of Education told us, for this year, we're gonna give you 3.9 million and you're gonna use it in this way. So the same, ISC did the same, and every funder has to do the same. So during this period of the 45 days between May and June, we have received agreements, not money, but agreements for a total of 20.7. And the percentages just tell us which is our main funder. So our main funder is ISC because they have agreed to give us 13.4 million. And that it is our main funder because 60% of what we have signed during this period, it comes from ISC. So this is only a commitment that they have made to give us. It doesn't necessarily, is the cash that we have received. The cash gets distributed, like depending on the funder. But it's the commitment that they have made. And then basically, this information replaces the agreement by agreement that council used to sign before. So it's just a consolidated.
Okay, thank you, Anna Cecile. I do see Wendy has her hand up.
Yeah, I get this slide. This is pretty straightforward. Where it doesn't make sense for me is the bottom chart, but I'll take it offline and just call Darren or Anna Cecile and understand it better, because the two aren't connecting for me, meaning the same thing. That's all. But I'm not going to take up any more time.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. Are there any further questions or comments for Anna Cecile? Okay, seeing or hearing none, can we look to Anna Cecile? Are you looking to a motion just to accept your presentation as information at this time?
Yes, it's only accepted this information.
Okay, is there a motion, a mover at this point to accept Anna Cecile's funding agreements presentation as information? Is there a mover?
Yeah, I will.
Moved by Carrie and seconded by Sherry Lynn. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motions carried. That does complete our open agenda portion of general finance. I will now look to a motion to adjourn.
I'll move it,
Moved
Hazel.
by Sherry Lynn, seconded by Hazel. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motions carried. Thank you so much for joining us this morning at General Finance, and we look forward to joining you back on Facebook at our next duly convened full council meeting.